Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I am joined by the fantabulous N.J. Alexander, also known as Nick, author of Fogbound. How are you doing today?
Kay, I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Really excited to be
Absolutely.
here.
Thank you so much for joining me. And I know we were chatting before the show, but it's always a pleasure to chat with authors and that you sacrifice your time to be interrogated.
I am perfectly fine with being interrogated.
Excellent, because we have some questions to go through
That's what we're
today.
going to do today. Love it.
Do you have a copy of your book? Can you give us a little introduction for yourself
Yes.
and what your book is about?
Yes. Conveniently, I do have a copy of my book sitting right
Excellent.
here. So I always do that when I hold up a copy. I put my hand over the title. So there we go. So the book is called Fogbound. It stars it
Hey,
stars
Richard.
a thanks, Richard. Hey, I really appreciate you joining, Richard, especially all the way in the UK at 1 in the morning. I appreciate you, man.
Y
Um, anyway, so Fogbound stars a history teacher who has the unfortunate fate of being under mind control from a warrior who has been dead for hundreds of years.
Ooh.
And now that a war has begun in his home country, the warrior has forced Zershin Volnare, the history teacher, to enlist in the army, and now he must embark on a battle for both his homeland and his own mind.
Geez, high stakes, and is it really your own choices?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very high stakes.
Yeah, I love it, I love it. We got a few other folks here with us. Tim,
Hey,
welcome.
Tim. Welcome
Always
in,
good to see
Tim.
you. And Chris, good to see you too. Thanks for
Hey,
stopping in.
Chris.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for showing up, guys, and joining us. If you have questions for Nick here, by all means, pop them in the chat and we will cover
Mhm.
those throughout as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it definitely sounds like an unreliable narrator there, too, Richard.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And I also probably should say what the genre is. It is an epic fantasy book. That's
That's not
probably good to
important.
say. Oh
Uh,
man.
I love it. That's totally not important.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares
Just
about genre?
read the book.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, in terms of your ideal reader audience,
Mm.
who would your ideal reader be?
Sure. So this is interesting. It's not something I set out to do with the book, but multiple people have told me, multiple people who are not, like hard fantasy fans, have told me
Mhm.
that this book was quite easy on them, and it was a
Oh.
good like first adventure into a fantasy novel. I've had more than a few
Oh,
people say that, where they're either not big fantasy fans or they've been having trouble getting into fantasy lately, and this was the book that really broke that for them. But
right.
at the end of the day, though, this is a fantasy book at its core. It is for those who love magic, swords, axes, that sort of thing. It is not grimdark, but I
Mm,
will say it is geared more toward adults. I would not
right,
call Fogbound a young adult or a middle grade novel.
right.
There's some coarse language. Some people get bashed on the head. It's definitely leaning more toward adults.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
That's
Yes.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
I love it, I love it, and I'm curious
Yeah.
for the feedback that you did get for it
Yeah.
being an accessible entry into to
Mhm.
fantasy. Did
Yeah.
they say why? What was it that made it so easy to fall into?
Yeah, so I didn't it's I don't go too heavy into description
Mm.
of like
Ah,
places, like environments, random objects in a room. I've gotten some comments where I describe things just enough to
mm,
one be like a good enough description, and two for people to use their own imagination onto what
mm,
things or characters look like. And I would say the names of places, yeah, that there Richard put it perfectly in that comment, better than I can do right now. That's really, it
oh,
wasn't intentional that I did that, just sort of the way I
right.
write. And and it gives me another marketing tactic, I suppose, that hey, you haven't read fantasy for a while, having trouble getting into it. Fogbound is a great gateway fantasy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, Richard says that here too. I recommend as a gateway title.
And it's good to start with it because the later books in the series will get a lot more weird. So
Oh, I love it. I love
yeah.
weird.
Yes, it's going to get a lot more weird. If you've read Fogbound and thought it was weird, oh, it gets much more weird.
And, Richard left a comment here as
Yeah.
well. "I love the profanity. More, please."
More profanity. Yeah, some of the characters are prone to dropping an F-bomb or two.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's good to know because some readers don't like that, some
This is
do,
true.
right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
true.
it's definitely good to know. Now, in terms of stories,
Mm,
because stories is what it all comes down to,
that's
right?
right. Yeah.
Regardless of its format, whether it's books,
Mhm.
TV, what have you,
Yeah.
what's a story that you absolutely love, and, did it influence your writing?
So there's a few. I'm gonna go with some older ones that maybe when I was younger,
Mm,
and then some newer ones, as of a few years ago when Fogbound was officially in the writing and publication stage and whatnot. So
yeah.
I was really inspired to write. It's a cliche answer by the reading of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings when I was young. That's
Mm,
really what I always read. I was a pretty big reader when I was a kid, but I didn't really get into fantasy and wanting to write my own until I read The Hobbit when I was about 10 years old. It may have been 11, but that was about the time I read it. And then I read Lord of the Rings a year or so after. I mean, I didn't really know what was going on. For those who have read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, they are written very differently. Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
is a much more adult level reading book than The Hobbit is.
Mm.
And there was a lot of skimming through until I saw some swords clashing, and then I read that part. Then
You
I
went to
never
the good
really.
parts.
That's right, exactly. So later on in life too, I've always been a fan of fantasy video games. And I've always leaned more toward the games of swords and magic rather than guns, and that's what led
Mm.
to my love of this specific genre. Um, and then later on, in my late 20s, I'm 33 now. In my late 20s into my 30s, the recent authors that have inspired me are Nicholas Eames and Kings of the Wild, one of my favorite books
Yes.
of the past few years. You'll notice some similarities in my writing, and there's some of the same kind of humor you'll
Mm.
find in both books. And John Gwynne is one of my
Yes.
new favorite. I know it's like I feel like I knew about John Gwynne before it was cool because he's all the rage now,
He
but I first
is.
read his book some years ago when he wasn't as popular.
Right.
And now, I mean, he is one of the beloved fantasy writers right now. I think alongside
Yes.
Brandon Sanderson, he really is.
Yeah, he tells just, phenomenal
He's awesome.
stories.
He
Yeah.
is just awesome. He's a grade A human being. I really like
Yes.
John Gwynne a lot.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember when Malice first came out,
Yes.
and so
Mhm.
I'm in Canada,
Yes. Okay.
and how book publications worked here at that
Mhm.
time, now we're talking over 10 years ago,
Yeah.
was if it was a book that was written by a UK author, the
Mhm.
likelihood that you would get the continuation of the series in physical format and
Mhm.
well, I mean, ebooks weren't really that big of a thing then,
Yeah.
was very slim.
Oh,
So, I
interesting.
remember seeing his books on the shelves and thinking, "It's too much of a risk if I love it,
You're
and
never
we
gonna get
don't
the
get the
rest of them.
rest."
Oh, that's so
So,
sad.
now that's obviously changed with the way
Right.
distribution is and
Mhm.
things being a little bit easier to ship out and publish
Yeah.
across seas, but, yeah, I remember that, and it's still like I'm still waiting to read it. I've got it there on my shelf, and I'm gonna read it, but, I got swept up by the Bloodsworn saga.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the new and popular one of his, right? I mean, I started with The
Yes.
Faithful and the Fallen back in the day. I think Malice, I believe, in that series was his debut,
Yes.
and I was
Yeah, it
hooked
was.
from there. I
I
actually
love
listened
it.
to it on Audible, and from there, I bought the entire series. You can't see it on my
Yeah.
shelf. I think it's blocked by my chair, but I bought the whole series. I think I have every single one of his books on my
Oh,
shelf
wow.
now. Yeah,
I
I love
love
it.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic, and we have John here with us. Welcome, John, good to see you,
Hey,
and,
John, thanks for stopping in.
oh, this is such a sweet comment, and this is why I love sharing our passions.
I love that.
Richard is now dipping into, fantasy writing as a result of reading
I love
Fogbound.
that.
Thank you
And
so much for sharing.
yeah, and from what I've read of Richard's Price War, I'm not done with it. I know he'll do a bang up job at writing fantasy. He's got it in him.
I love it. We're gonna keep our eyes out.
That's right.
And, Tim here, which John Gwynne book would you recommend starting with?
Whenever I recommend and either it's an author, game series, any sort of media, I always recommend just start at the beginning,
Mm,
because Malice is his first book, right, in the Faithful and the Fallen series. It is
Yeah.
very much a classic swords
Mm.
clashing kind of fantasy novel. That's really like my thing. I love that stuff.
Yes.
And I know because it's his debut, he gets much better, right? I still think
Mhm.
it's awesome, but it is a debut, so there's a little give or take there. But
Yeah.
I would recommend starting with Malice and going from there. I believe his next series after that, which I don't know why the series title is escaping me right now, but I believe it is related to The Faithful and the Fallen. You don't have to read The Faithful and the Fallen to
Oh,
understand
interesting.
it, but I believe it takes part in either the same world or something like that. So I would really recommend starting at the beginning.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that about the Bloodsworn
Yeah.
saga, but I did hear that it was a Ragnarok retelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
he kind of wanted to
Yeah.
put his own spin on that.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess I mean depends. Are you publication order reader or are you a
Ooh.
pick your flavor, right?
Yeah, I think with John Gwynn, because everything he writes is fantasy and everything that
Mm.
I'm not calling it the same thing, right? It's not all the same. But to me, that means it's like, I'm gonna start at the very beginning. You
Yeah.
don't have to, but I typically do that with every new author I come across. I start with publication order, except for Brandon Sanderson, because he has, a book coming out every other day.
Yeah,
So
there's no way you can keep up or pick.
no, no chance.
Just put your hand in the bin and pull a book
Yeah,
out.
exactly. Yeah.
I'm right there with you, Chris.
Yeah.
I read Bloodsworn first and
Yeah.
still need to get to The Faithful and the
You got to
Fallen.
get The Faithful and the Fallen. It's such like if you love that classic fantasy feel, it's gonna hit you in all the right places.
Oh, I
That's
love
what it
it.
did for me. Yeah.
I love it. And there's something about that anticipation, right? You've been hanging on to this
Yeah.
series for so long. Do you really wanna start and find out?
Exactly. I know, right? I'm hyping it up so much. I hope you both like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll report back. I'm
Yeah,
speaking
right.
for Chris.
My DMs are open. Report back.
Yeah, speaking for Chris and Tim on that.
That's right.
So, I in terms of your own book, what is it that you hope readers get out of it?
That's such a good question. I think what I set out to do with Fogbound, right? It's the first of a series. It will be 4 books in the
Mm,
series. It is the first one. What I hope readers get is that it's not just a setup book. It's not a
mm,
book where you say, "Oh yeah, you know what? The rest of the series is good, but you got to read Fogbound because it sets the stage." It's not like that at all.
gotcha.
Fogbound, you could read Fogbound like a standalone. It is its own story and it's not just used to set up the rest of the
Mm,
books in the series.
I like
So,
that.
yeah. And that was something I set out from the beginning because we've all experienced that, or we've had someone
Mhm.
tell us something about a book series. Hey, the first book's okay, but you got to get through this book to understand the rest. I
Yeah.
didn't want to do that. And I really made it a mission to have the main character has a complete story arc. There's everything you want in a fantasy book in there.
Mm.
I really wanted to make sure you got the whole experience without feeling like, this was just one big prologue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you just had to get through it, right?
Yeah,
That's not exactly the sales pitch you're hoping for when you write.
exactly. And
Yeah.
aside from that too, it's you can read Fog, but I'm not telling anybody how to read my book. They can read it any way they want. Fogbound can definitely be read as, from front to back as a fun classic fantasy romp
Mm,
through an adventure. You can definitely read it like that. However, there is a lot of mystery
mm.
buried between the lines. I don't really tell you everything,
Oh, I love that.
but you can figure out a lot of mystery
Mm.
by maybe reading subtext, maybe catching a line here or there, like, wait a minute, that seems odd. If it seems odd, there's probably a reason for it.
Get your notebooks,
That's
start
right.
start keeping track.
Everything was done with intention.
Nice,
So if it
okay.
seems weird or out of place, just watch out. It probably wasn't.
I love it, and so you
Yeah.
said this is gonna be 4 books. Are you
Yes.
gonna keep this contained to 1 series? Is it gonna expand into a bigger, kind of like a secondary series set in the same world? Or are you gonna keep it
Yeah, I think right now things can change, of course, but right now it's a
Mm,
4 book series set in this one world, and then that will be it for that world. And then I'll move
okay.
on to maybe a different world. I think Brandon Sanderson, a lot of his books, they take place in this world called the Cosmere.
Yes.
Even like Mistborn and
The Way of the
the
Kings.
yeah, and the Stormlight Archive technically take part in the same universe, I believe is
Yes.
how that works. That I don't want to go that route with this. But
Okay.
hey, talk to me again in a year, maybe I've changed my mind. But right now, that's the plan.
Yeah, we'll talk to you after you start, like, trying to craft out a whole other world, and you're like, "No, I just
You
need
know
to
what? It's so much easier just do this.
just stay in the same playground."
Yeah, this world building thing is hard. I'm just gonna stick to this. Yeah.
I love it. So in I'm gonna take a little dive away here from the
Yeah.
writing, and we'll come
Sure.
back to it
Okay.
because
Yeah.
I have other questions for you because you're not just a writer, you're also a podcast host.
That's
Can we
right.
talk
That's
about
right.
that?
Yes, we definitely can talk about that. I'm really proud of this. So, the podcast called Goddamn GameCube
Love
was
it.
started. It's a video game podcast started by my brother Greg and our mutual friend Riley. They technically started as a duo podcast. Asked me if I'd like to come on as a third person, and I'm affectionately known as Nick the intern. I do all of the video production, and I do
Oh,
all of the thumbnails for YouTube.
oh my gosh, that is
Um,
so much work.
it's good. It's really funny because I'm going to brag a little bit because well
For
I think
sure.
we deserve to at this point. The podcast started late 2019. We do about 2 million impressions a year, and we do a couple
Wow,
hundred 200,000 downloads across platforms per year.
that's
It's
amazing.
really grown to be a very popular podcast. Up there with we're up there with the likes of IGN and other like actual news, video game news media podcasts
Mm,
with our popularity. Our episodes routinely get in the top 5% of Spotify. I should say we are mostly a Spotify and audio show. We do put all of our episodes on YouTube, but we're really mostly an audio show, and you'll
yeah.
get yeah. So we're really focused on Spotify and other areas other places where you'll get your podcasts. But yeah, we're my brother and I joke that he's in a band and I write books. We say, the thing that we've actually put the least amount of money into, the podcast, is what's our most our most popular creative endeavor. But hey,
Well, you know what? It's
yeah,
amazing because it's a lot to manage.
it is.
Editing, doing the
It is a lot to
publications, and
manage.
then
Yeah,
recording, that's a lot
yeah.
of time on top of writing and
Mhm.
whatever else you do in your
It is.
life, right?
Oh, and actually, if anybody here has listened to Goddamn GameCube, take a look at my screen. You're looking at the former studio for Goddamn
Oh,
GameCube. We used to record in this room until my brother set up his own studio. We recorded right here in this room.
wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing. I love that it's a family thing too,
it
family and friends,
is.
right?
It is. Yeah, my brother, my brother and Riley, they're audio production guys.
Oh,
They
nice.
they know exactly what gear to get, what stuff to use. Like, listen, this mic that I have here is awesome. I've got a sound system over there. I don't know anything about it. They told me what to get.
I love it.
Yeah,
I feel you on that because my
yeah.
husband's like, "Buy this mic. That's what we can afford.
Exactly. That's what I
It'll
did.
be good."
Yeah, it's a Shure mic, right? Yeah, it's great.
Yep.
You can't do much better than that. Yeah.
No, it's great, it's
Yeah.
great. The only thing I did find,
Yeah.
as a downside with these mics,
Yeah.
is they pick up male voices much better than female.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, at least the one I have. I
Interesting.
think it's slightly different
Oh,
than yours, it's a different model, but my
yeah.
my husband can
Ooh.
be talking in the background, and it'll actually pick him up louder than it will pick up me
Really?
right in front of it.
That is bizarre.
Yeah,
What?
we've tried playing with settings, we've tried all the things, and I think it's just the soft nature of
Wow.
my voice compared to a male or a stronger
Maybe.
voice. So,
Maybe. Wow, that's so strange.
yeah, if
Huh.
anyone has a solution to that mystery, by all means,
Yeah, put
let
it in the
me
comments.
know.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Yeah, right.
But it is fascinating because you go through all these reviews, and that was not
Mhm.
something I had seen any feedback on.
Yeah, that's so odd. You have to submit a review.
Yeah, I there you go. You know
Yeah.
what? As a reviewer, you think I'd know better.
That's right, that's right.
So, from all of your experiences
Yeah.
with the show, do you have a memorable story or a guest that you got to chat with?
Oh, man. Goddamn GameCube has had some awesome guests, I'll
I can
say.
imagine.
So I'll name a few I say off the top of my head. I have them written down here. We've had so many cool guests, I actually had to write them down because I can't remember them all from memory. So this first one here,
Hmm,
anyone here will know the game he worked on, but you will not know this man's name. If
how it
you
goes.
do, that's amazing. His name is Don or Dan Rowich. He is the creator of Oregon Trail.
No.
Yeah, we talked to him a couple seasons ago. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was really cool. Let's see. Another person we talked to was Mike Bithell. If you're into indie video games, he's a game developer. He is most famous for a game where you control a square, and his name is the game name is Thomas Was Alone. If
Wow,
you ever heard of that
okay.
one, that's his claim to fame.
Yeah.
We've also interviewed Bill Gardner, who was a designer for the video game series BioShock.
No
And
way.
we also talked to Jordan Mechner, who is the creator of the Prince of Persia series.
That's insane.
There are many other guests. Oh, you know what? There's a YouTube star that we interviewed too, named 8-Bit Music Theory. If you've heard of that channel,
Oh,
does
that
like
sounds familiar.
does like deep dives on video game music. We interviewed him as well.
Yes, I've
Yeah.
seen that channel. I've watched those
Mhm.
videos. Yeah,
Yeah.
my pastime in this house is,
Yeah.
watching those YouTube videos on old N64 games.
I love that. I
Yes.
love that. But yeah, I mean,
Um,
we've had a few more other guests, but I'd say those are really the big hits for the guests we've
yeah,
had. Yeah.
that's amazing. So I'm curious, as someone
Yeah.
who hosts interviews, I'm always
Yeah.
afraid to go and ask those big names
Mhm.
if they would sit and
Yeah.
chat with me.
Yeah.
What was it like for you guys asking some of those big names, those, you know, influential people
Yeah.
in gaming history to
So
sit down and
I give credit to my brother. He is just brazen. He will ask whoever. He doesn't care who you are.
uh,
He will find your agent. Oh my God, I forgot one. We had Ken Klippenstein, the reporter, on the show once. Yeah. I forgot about Ken. Yeah.
oh, that's awesome. So he just
Yeah.
has that confidence and he just goes
Yeah.
in, he's like, the worst thing they can say is no.
Exactly, exactly. Like he
Love it.
literally called Ken Klippenstein has like his breaking news number that you can just call. He called it. My brother just called it and asked if he'd be on the show. He said, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
That's great. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I love that it's, that a reminder that it's just a barrier of
It
yourself,
is. It is.
right?
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, I've learned a lot from my brother in that regard too. Just it's like you said, what is the worst they can say? No.
Yeah.
But the other cool thing too is it's not exactly an interview, but Goddamn GameCube was invited to go to the Game Developers Conference back a couple
Oh,
months ago, which is really cool. So my brother went down to San Francisco and got to hang out with all the game devs. The makers of Baldur's Gate 3, Larian Studios was there too. We got to have a conversation with them, off the mic,
yeah.
but he got to meet all of these game developers there. It's been a great experience. I mean, with Goddamn GameCube's reach, we're starting to get media
Mm,
kits, and developers will send us download codes to review their games. It's really
nice.
become it's really cool. We just love having that voice. I'm sure you think of
Yeah.
that too as a book review channel. You have a voice and you say, hey,
Mhm.
if I recommend a book, people will buy it.
I'm
And that's
still
how we
coming to
feel.
terms with that idea.
Yeah. It's a strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like on our show, like if we review a game, so a little bit about Goddamn GameCube.
Yeah.
We do a lot of deep dive game reviews, but it's not necessarily new stuff that like we're not a game just came out last week, let's review it. We're not really that kind of show. We
Right.
really march to the beat of our own drum. Like we'll do a game that came out 30 years ago, and then next week review a game that came out a month ago. That sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that you have that variety, right? Because there's
Yeah.
so many channels that are tackling everything new and
Yeah. Hmm.
there's talking about videos we watch a lot
Yeah.
of VR ones with the
Oh,
games.
sure. Hmm.
A lot of those channels are, "Oh, I've got the beta for this. Oh, I've got the beta for that." Right?
Hmm.
And very few of them are about, the older games that were released and how they're continuing to develop in the background.
Exactly. Exactly. We love doing that. We also
Yeah.
like to shed some light on indie games too, maybe ones that didn't get a lot of love. We found some great
Yeah.
gems in indie games.
Yes.
So,
And on the flip side, I don't know
yeah.
if you've seen these channels, but the ones that
Ooh.
find, like, the worst games,
Oh, terrible games.
they're
Oh
so
man.
funny.
They're awesome. I love those. We don't review a lot of terrible games on Goddamn Game.
Right.
Reviewed a couple, but
Okay.
I would say the worst game we reviewed was Deadly Premonition 2, where
Oh, okay.
both Greg and Riley gave that game an F. I'm pretty sure
Oh.
both of them did. I think that's the worst game we've reviewed on Goddamn GameCube.
You know what though? It's
Yeah.
fascinating because even with those reviews and those videos
Yeah.
that go out,
Yeah.
there are then just a huge hit of popularity streams for that
Oh,
game,
yeah.
right? They get a
Absolutely.
ton of attention and people wanna try it
Absolutely.
for themselves. What was the
Unfortunately, people probably tried that game. It's universally, like, hated, so I don't think anybody
oh,
actually likes it.
you know what? There are people playing games where you pressure wash things,
That's
so
true.
there's a game for everyone.
You know what? That game is probably better than Deadly Premonition 2. Yeah.
That's a that's a low bar. That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, well.
So in terms of the episodes, I'm gonna make you pick a
Yes.
favorite.
Oh,
Which
a
one
favorite?
yeah, which one has
Well,
been your personal favorite episode?
so, man, so I have a lot. I'm not a regular host, right? I'll be on
Right.
maybe so our seasons are about 25 episodes. I'm maybe on about 10 per
Yeah, that's
season.
fair.
So I will say my favorites are the ones with me and my brother. We do our Nostalgia Bros series
Uh,
where we'll talk about because we play, we're both similar in age. He's 32.
mm.
Is he 32 or 31? Ah, shit. Shoot.
What's
um,
his tag? We're gonna
yeah, right, yeah, right. Oops. But yeah, we play a lot of co-op games together. We've been
Nice.
gaming our entire lives. So sometimes we'll do these episodes on, you know, our favorite Game Boy Advance games from when we were
Ah,
kids, stuff like
yes.
that. If I had to choose specific episodes though, I love our episodes on, well, you can see from the posters behind me. I'm a big fan of Fire Emblem. So
Yes.
any episode we do on Fire Emblem, that's just my game. It's my series. So I just love talking
Mm,
about those games. I could talk about them for hours.
that's fantastic. I remember trying that when it first came out, and I
Ooh, which
don't
one?
it probably I don't even remember, it's been that long, like,
Ooh.
it
Remember
I
what
rem
system?
no. I'm
Oh no.
terrible. I'm terrible. Is
Let's see. Let's see if I can get it. Let's see if we can test
okay.
my knowledge. Just see if I can figure this game out.
This yeah, a little flash trivia
Yeah.
for you, 'cause I remember it first coming out, and it was, like, this big hit, everyone was
Yeah.
talking about it, and, I just remember I really enjoyed it, but similar
Yeah.
to books, I'm
Yeah.
terrible with finishing series, and I'm
Mm,
terrible with finishing games, especially back
okay.
then.
All
I
right.
mainly played video games back then as, like, between my parents driving places
Oh,
in the back
sure.
seat,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
time I had, I would
Yeah.
use.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're going time period. Are we thinking is this like 4 or 5 years ago, or is this like 10 or 15 years ago?
Oh, it would have been, like, 15 some years
Ooh,
ago.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Was it on the GameCube?
No, I didn't have a
No,
GameCube.
didn't have a GameCube. Was it
No.
portable?
It was portable.
Okay, so it was probably Game Boy Advance, or maybe it was DS.
I wanna say advanced, Game Boy
Game Boy
Advance.
Advance. Did
Yeah.
it have two blue-haired twins on the cover?
The fact that you know this.
Listen, I wasn't kidding.
It might have, I don't even remember what the cover looked like. I just
Okay.
remember playing it. I remember the screen of it and,
Yeah.
sitting for playing it, but,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm gonna say it was either Fire Emblem self-titled for the Game Boy Advance that had a trio of Ellawood, Lynn, and Hector, or the Sacred Stones, also for Game Boy Advance. It's probably one of those two games.
You know what? I'm after our chat here, I'm gonna look
Yeah,
up the
you figure that
covers,
out.
and as soon as I see it, I'll know, I'll message you.
Okay. I'm curious if I'm right. It'd also be really embarrassing if I'm
You know what?
right.
And for the chat too, I'll leave a comment after and we'll we'll know which one.
That's right. We're gonna figure this out.
I love it. So, I love that that game has stood out to you for so long and that they've continued it too, because those kind of games, either they flop or they just
Yeah.
carry on forever.
Yeah, it might be time for them to put an end to it. It's not as good as it used to be, but that's
Oh, no.
okay. No, it's really like it's just my life's mission to play every single one of those games now. It's just
Right.
who I am at this point. But you know,
Yeah. No, I love it. You gotta have a
yeah,
goal, right? Goal in
that's
life.
right. And that unfortunately is mine.
Same here. I suddenly miss my Game Boy Color Classic.
Yeah,
I
love
still
that.
have mine.
Oh, you do? That's
I
awesome.
do, I
That's
do. I have
awesome.
mine, and I ended up my husband, his got lost or handed
Ooh.
down through the
Hmm.
family when he was a
Yeah.
kid. So I actually bought a replacement for
Hmm.
his, the exact same one, and we've got
Yeah.
them up on display, from our
That's
childhood.
awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. That's awesome.
So in terms of looking forward on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, and I'm gonna change the question I originally had here.
Ooh. All
If
right.
you could get your dream guest, who would
Ooh.
they be?
Man. Let's see. So I'm trying to think of the kind of guests that we haven't really had yet. I would say, well, we've interviewed one voice actor. I would love to interview
Mm,
more voice actors. I
yeah.
think for me, Joe Zija would be an awesome guest.
Okay.
Well, of course, he voices Claude in Fire Emblem Three Houses, but he's a
Ah,
pretty prolific voice actor.
yeah.
I also met Ben Starr at PAX East. He's the lead voice actor for Final Fantasy 16.
No way.
So yeah, I just happened to run into him. so,
That's
so it'd be really
awesome.
cool to interview him too. Although
Yeah.
we kind of beat down Final Fantasy 16 on the show, so he may not come on. But but it would be cool to interview him.
You never know.
You never know. Never know.
What was that tactic? Just have confidence and ask
Exactly.
anyway.
That's right. Exactly.
So, apart from Fire Emblem,
Yeah.
what other games do you enjoy playing today?
Ooh, today. So I still have that love for the sword and the sorcery RPG kind of game.
Yeah.
I typically call them like the four dudes in a line game.
That's pretty
Yeah.
accurate.
So I'll still love those, whether it's like Persona, that
Right.
series, or more recent series, something like Octopath Traveler that's out for the
Okay.
Switch, those
Yes,
kind of
yeah.
games. Yeah. I also love the art style that those games tend to have.
I do too.
So I
Yeah.
don't know, it just scratches that because I love that pixel art from way back in the day. So
And
it
it's
just kind
it's
of
just
scratches that itch.
the style of the gameplay too, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
also like it's okay. I also really love From Software's games like Dark Souls, Elden
Yes.
Ring, all that. So I would say two very different styles of games. The cozy RPG versus the oh
Yes.
my god, I'm dying every 2 seconds kind of game. Yeah. But I do
Yeah.
love them both.
I tried Dark Souls when it first
Oh,
came out.
nice.
I got to
Yeah.
the first boss and I was like, "This
Nice.
is not the kind of game I have skill for." I will gladly watch other people play this.
Oh, what a game, Dark Souls.
It was infuriating. We'll
It's
leave it at
really
that.
that's right. I love it. I love it.
Uh, Tim here says, Game Boy Color and N64, childhood in a
Oh,
nutshell. Absolutely.
yeah. Yep. Right there with you, Tim.
Yeah, 90s kid, I'm sure.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Yeah, and Richard here actually has a great question as well. If you could get
Hmm.
one game voice actor to do the Fogbound audiobook, who would it be?
I just mentioned Ben Starr. I think it'd be okay. This is why I say that because my proofreader and editor Scout Dawson, she left a really funny comment about one of my characters.
Oh.
The big funny man. I love this archetype. Like
Mm,
the big dude with the big weapon who's like this lovable
yes,
teddy bear kind of guy. Yes, I
love
love
them.
those. So I have one, and whenever he said something funny or something stupid, like Scout left a comment in the draft, it would be really funny. I just picture him being British and having a British accent. And I'm just like, you know what? This needs to happen now. So,
Awesome.
so I think I need a voice actor with a British accent. And I think it would
Okay.
be perfect.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to start doing
Start looking at
some research
Yeah,
and
I know.
let us know what name you come up with.
I will. I will.
Uh, so in terms of, advice, if you have any advice for anyone who wants to start a podcast, because I
Ooh.
know you're working on more of the administrative
Yeah.
stuff and then the background things, even though
Mhm.
you are taking part in the hosting.
Yeah.
What would you give as advice to anyone wanting to start their own podcast or channel, anything like that?
Yeah. So I think with everybody's podcast is going to be different, right? If it's something like
Mm,
goddamn GameCube, well, actually, you know what? Let me go back a little bit. For every podcast, or any sort of YouTube channel, I think you have to invest in the right gear first. Um,
okay.
if it's an audio only show and your audio quality sucks, you're not
Yeah.
going to do very well. So I know it's unfortunate. This stuff costs money, but I think it's a really good idea to invest in a quality microphone, quality
Mm,
production gear. As if you're an audio podcast and your audio isn't good, people aren't
yeah.
going to listen to you. No matter how good or your research is, no matter how cool your topic is, there's something to be said. Now that I've been on a podcast and our podcast is very good quality, I'll listen to maybe other podcasts. I'm like, oh, they didn't mix
Yeah.
that right. That's not, no. That one guy, no, his mic sucks.
Yeah.
So you really should invest in that. And when you're actually starting the show, so for goddamn GameCube, we're not reviewing games as they come out. What really helps us is to do like 10 or 12 episodes a season before we even launch for the season.
So you
Like
have a
have them
backlog.
in the can.
Yeah.
Always have a backlog. So unfortunately, so we record in person. We're all local.
Yeah.
And of course, we all know when in 2020 with the COVID lockdowns, we couldn't see each other. So we had to, as we were making our plans to record virtually, we fortunately had 10 or so episodes just in the backlog that we could still release every single week and we wouldn't have dead content.
Yeah.
Because that's another really important thing is if you're going to have a podcast, get a regular cadence. The best way to lose listeners is to post one episode and then forget to do it for 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, that person's not gonna come back. They're not gonna keep looking. Yeah.
Exactly. It's totally cool to take breaks. Like goddamn
Yeah.
GameCube, we have 25 episode seasons, and then we take a few months off, and then we come back. But you
Yeah.
need to establish a cadence, whether that's episode a week, every 2 weeks, whatever it is. Establish a cadence and stick to it.
Yeah. It's funny the parallels because it's very similar advice I would give for a YouTube channel,
Yeah, totally. Same
right?
thing. Yeah, very
I
similar.
know YouTube is very visual, but if
Yeah.
your audio is terrible, people aren't
Hmm.
gonna stay around. They'll stick
Yeah.
with the poor video quality more
Yeah.
so than poor audio.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with
Yeah.
that. But
And then
it's unfortunate, it's you got to invest in the gear.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's an investment up front, and
yeah.
I think at the same point too, you kinda have to go into, at least with YouTube, you have to go
Yeah.
into the mentality of this is gonna be a hobby
Hmm.
for a long
Yep.
time, if not
Hmm.
indefinite,
Yeah.
because the odds of you making money from this are very,
Very low.
very low.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that reminds me of one other piece of advice I'll give. Podcast stats are low.
Mm,
So like they're not like YouTube. Getting a
yeah,
few thousand getting like 50 plays in your first week. Like if you publish a podcast episode on Spotify and 50 people listen to it, your very first episode, that's pretty good.
yeah.
Like you should not consider that a failure.
No,
Podcasts,
definitely.
unlike YouTube, they will start slow. Your plays won't be as high, but you have to
Mm,
stick to it. Like
yeah,
it took goddamn GameCube. Like we didn't have a viral hit early
yeah,
on that really got us our popularity. It's been organic growth over the span
yeah,
of 4 years that's gotten us to where we are.
yeah.
So don't quit. Even if your first couple episodes aren't going viral, keep it up.
Yeah, that's it too. You can't wait for that viral one to
Mhm.
strike because again, it's like lightning, right?
Exactly.
The odds of it
Exactly.
happening are very slim, and
Very
it's
slim.
usually not very serious content either,
No, no, it's
right?
not.
Like, you and I were talking about this before, where it's
Yeah,
usually something really silly, like someone falling down or,
that's right.
you
Right,
know,
exactly.
yeah,
Like,
accidents.
yeah, our most popular, like we post some snippets of the podcast to YouTube Shorts sometimes. Our
Yeah.
most popular snippets from YouTube Shorts are random memes,
Yep.
and the one where my brother didn't know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man.
I could see that.
Like nothing really to do with what we're talking about, but those have been the most popular shorts.
No, I completely agree, like,
Yeah.
the most popular shorts on my channel are skits or,
Yep.
transitions,
That's
right?
how it is. Oh, the
It's
transition video was awesome. I remember that one.
yeah, thank you. But those ones are more popular than if I were
Yeah.
to do snippets of videos or
Yeah.
like, "Hey, this is a book I recommend and you should
Yeah.
check it out." If I were to make a
Mhm.
skit about that book, that would probably go
Oh, yeah.
much further in views.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, that's just how it goes.
How it
W
is.
We've got, Jim McCleary here, good to see you. He's right on with all of
All the
the
British stuff.
British
Love it.
slang.
I love it. Welcome, Jim. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're gonna open it up to the live chat for a moment here, and
Mhm.
as there is a delay, we'll keep going while we're waiting for those questions to come in. But folks, if you have a question for Nick, by all means, pop them in the chat. We will get to those as well.
Excellent.
And in the meantime, we're gonna dive back into your writing.
Let's do it.
So When did you start the whole writing process? Because I know you said you wanted to start writing when you were 12. You had that spark and passion
Mhm.
then, but at what point did you say, you know what, I'm going to actually sit down and write this book?
Yeah. So it all really started way back in the day, 25 years ago. No, not really. But when I was young, my writing really started. I stayed with my grandparents a lot. And
Mm.
usually when I was there, my parents worked or whatever, I'd have a couple hours or whatnot with my grandparents. I'd always have a short story for them whenever I was done
Aw.
with my visit. So that's really how my writing started. And then when I got into read, when I got to like, that 12-year ish, when I wanted to start writing like a lot, I hand wrote a uh, quote unquote full length novel. It was like 200 handwritten pages.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was. I mean, my handwriting is like really big, so I don't know
Still,
how many pages it would have actually been. So
paper was not
technically,
cheap,
that's
sir.
I know, right? Yeah, my poor mother had to keep buying paper for me. But but yeah, that's really how it all started. Now, where Fogbound specifically started,
Hmm.
it's a bit of a sad story.
Oh,
A bit of a
all
sad
right.
story. Well, mostly about me and dumb decisions that I made, but it's a sad story.
I'm
Uh,
buckled in.
yeah. All right. So when I was 19 is when I finished writing what was it was not called Fogbound way back then. I'm 33 now, so this is a long time ago. But when I was 19 is when that draft, the original draft was written, and I unfortunately fell victim to a vanity press. And that's how
Um,
yeah. So that
mm,
book got published. Um, and it was totally different way back when. Fogbound and that book are
mm,
just, I mean, while they're technically a similar idea, they are very much different books, but that's really where it all started.
right.
And some years later, like, because when I was 19, there there wasn't as much public information known about how to self-publish, how to hire
No.
freelancers, really wasn't. So it was so much easier to fall victim to a
Yeah.
vanity press. And I mean, that's how they fool you. They produced a legitimate looking book. Like they
Yeah.
did their job. And to me, I didn't know any better. I was like, oh, it looks great. I mean, looking back on it, oh, that thing was so bad. So what happened was some years later, I started taking things a lot more seriously. And
Mm.
I canceled my contract with the Vanity Press, which, of course, they already had my money. They were more than willing to cancel everything. Oh, they
Yeah.
responded in like 15 minutes. They were like, oh, yeah, here you go. Here's all the rights back. Well, rights. I didn't sell them rights, but you know what I mean. Here's all
Yeah.
the files. Here's everything we did, and blah, 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 blah. So I actually
Yeah,
did
gee,
something kind of,
thanks.
yeah, right. I did something kind of sneaky. So, of course, it got unpublished and removed from Amazon, but
Mm.
because Amazon listings don't really go away, what I did was I bought every single used copy on the internet of that old book. Every
Oh,
single one.
no.
Every single one, so they would no longer appear.
Wow.
Yep.
That's
I
dedication.
I was determined to get them off the market.
Wow.
Determined. And I did it. You cannot find it. I have scoured the internet. I will not be saying the title of the book because I don't want anybody to go and find it. But I scoured the internet
You just have this
for those
massive
books.
closet in your house
Oh,
filled
I'll
with,
use them. I thought about using them for kindling at some point.
you
Yeah.
know what? Your book, go
Yeah,
for it.
right. That's right. But yeah, so really, I tore them all down and I basically rewrote it from scratch. So the original
Mm.
draft was about 78,000 words. It's crazy that I still remember that.
Yeah.
But I probably deleted somewhere between 40 and 50,000 of them. And I
Wow.
rewrote it basically word by word and sentence by sentence. I wrote it back up to about 100,000 words.
Okay.
And then based on feedback, it grew to about 115,000. And that's where
Wow.
Fogbound is today. And this is actually a pretty interesting anecdote. One of the best pieces of feedback, this is going to sound like some sentence just totally out of nowhere. Best piece of feedback I ever got came from Facebook, if you can
Oh,
believe it.
and you know what? I've had
Yeah.
that. I've heard that
Yeah.
a few times from
Have
authors.
you? Nice.
Facebook is the one where they get, like, the best
Yeah. It's
feedback from, and I'm like,
wild,
"What?
right?
Who's still using Facebook?
I know.
Who's on there that they're that
Right?
helpful?"
So I can tell you what exactly happened. I remember it like it was yesterday. So this was about in 2020 when I
Right.
had done my full rewrite of what was then going to be Fogbound. And my original intention was to go trad, start
Okay.
acquiring,
Yeah.
write a query letter. I ended up not doing that. I ended up not sending out any because I got a little scared that all the agents
Mm.
asked for, was this book previously self-published? I'm like, oh God, technically it was, but technically it's different. I don't
Yeah.
know.
You
So
don't know
at
where
the
that
end,
line is.
for this, I don't know. Either way.
Yeah.
So I had posted a draft of my query
Mm.
letter, however you want to pronounce it, to the Facebook group Subic Club, if anyone's heard of that. It's a
Okay.
relatively popular Facebook group for those who would like to be traditionally published, and there is good advice given there.
Nice.
And I posted it, and I wish I could remember their name, the person who commented this, because they
Yeah.
really saved the book. This is what she said. She commented and said, Nick, your writing is beautiful, but your main character feels like they're a leaf in the wind with no motivations of their own. It's
Oh.
hard for an agent or most readers to get into a book like that. And I said,
Mm.
wow, that is so good.
Yeah.
That was just from the query letter. She didn't read any of the book. And I'm just like,
Wow.
huh, wow. And that is where the possession story of my main character came
Mm.
from. I'm like, okay, how do I make him go on this quest? Aha, that's what's going to happen. And he's going to learn from it and create his own motivations from there.
Wow.
So if you can imagine, people who have read Fogbound, there was a version of it without this possession at all.
Yeah. Yeah, you needed that motivation, you needed that,
Mm-hmm.
feedback. That's
Yeah.
and amazing that it came from some
Mhm.
random
A
person who was
random
just
person
willing to help you
provide
out and
feedback.
give feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, I really should. I think I could find it. Like if I went into like the Facebook group's history and search for my post, I could probably find it. But
Yeah.
that was years ago. It still sticks out to me. It not only it made for a much better book, it's also going to make for a much better series. So
Yeah.
I owe them a lot for that sentence they probably typed out in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Saved
and
me
I'm
a lot of work. That's for
I'm
sure.
amazing without even having read it,
Yeah,
right? Because
and she knew it exactly. Like she
yeah,
got it exactly right. I was like,
uh,
"Damn, you're good. This is why you're
yeah.
giving this is why you're giving feedback in this group."
That's that's why they're there.
Exactly.
Ah, oh, that's amazing. And Richard
Yeah.
here, do you still have used copies?
Do I still have? Ooh, I might have a couple.
Those are
Uh,
limited edition, never they're
oh
in a
yeah.
vault.
Yeah, right. They're in a vault. They're locked up. I threw away the key. That sort of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
sunk that vault to the bottom
Ex-
of the sea.
yes. Exactly. Exactly. Uh,
Yeah. And, Tim here says, "I like that, a fun
hmm.
solution to the agency problem."
Yeah, it was something that was going to happen actually later on in the series, but
Mm,
it ended up being it starting in the first book because one thing that I love, I probably should have mentioned, one you can call it a trope, we can call it a character archetype, is the reluctant hero. And
right.
that is exactly what you get with the main character. How do you
Yeah,
make a reluctant hero do the thing they're meant to do? And I
yeah.
thought of the possession as a way to make them learn that, hey,
Mm.
your life's going to be a little different now. You better embrace it, or bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, and well, another example of that is,
Mm-hmm.
The Coward by Stephen Aryan.
Oh, I
That
haven't
was
read it.
one I really enjoy it. It basically follows that reluctant hero where
Ooh,
he's older when you start the story, but basically
yeah.
when he was a kid, he just got lucky in a fight
Mm.
and became a hero, and he's
Yeah.
actually a coward. He's terrified
I love
of
it.
fighting, and he doesn't want to risk his life, and they
I
ask
love
him
it.
to save the world yet again,
He's like, ah,
right?
crap.
Yeah, he's like, "No, I don't wanna do this.
Right.
Like, I'm not." And, people are singing songs about him. He can't stand the songs because he knows what's actually happened, whereas
Oh,
people,
that's so funny.
bards, they come up with all kinds of stuff. So,
Amazing.
I like when you can put a twist on that, right? That
Hmm.
reluctant here, you can put your own spin to it. You can make that character's journey so unique.
Exactly. And it's funny because I mentioned Lord of the Rings earlier. We were talking about video games. My crap comparison. If you're going to compare the main character of Fogbound, Searchin Volnare, he is a cross between Bilbo Baggins and Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy. That is how I describe him.
Excellent. Put that on the back of the book.
That's right, exactly.
Tim here, actually, I want to
Yeah.
showcase this as
Yeah.
well. People like stories where characters have
Mhm.
agency and strong motivations, but the stories we love most
Mhm.
tend to take our characters on head spinning adventures. Hard
Mhm.
balance to strike. And so true. You have readers who
Definitely.
are character driven, and
Yeah.
others who are plot driven, and somewhere in
Mhm.
between.
Yeah.
So it's a hard balance to strike for any author trying to
It
tell their
is.
story.
And Fogbound is definitely a character-driven work.
Mm,
There's a lot of you know what? For an epic fantasy novel, there probably aren't as many characters as you'll find in some, but every character has their own arc, their own personality, their own internal conflict that they go through. Yes, of course, there's the overarching plot that I think it's pretty interesting, but it really is. But I do describe it as a character-driven work.
love it, love it. And so this whole journey you've
Yeah.
gone on from the time that
Mm,
you started as a young boy writing those
yeah.
stories for your grandparents up to
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
what have you learned about yourself as an author?
I've learned that I kind of gave a little bit of that away when I said it's a character-driven work because that's really what I like to write. I like
Mm,
to delve into the backstories of the character, what makes them tick or what makes them not, what they love, what they hate, what really drives them. The overarching plot, everything's that happen around them, that's fine, but I'm more interested in their reactions to the events
mm,
occurring around them than the events themselves. So I
right.
think to me, I relate to that. And I think as humans, we relate to characters who go through very human issues. Like you'll notice
Mhm.
in Fogbound, despite it being a fantasy novel, there are some like real like human issues that people go through.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, Zershin Volnare is possessed by a hero. Okay, whatever. That's pretty weird. That's pretty fantastical. But one character is searching for his long lost dad. Another
Right.
character is, he yearns to be in the military, but he can't pass the freaking test. There's and
Yeah.
it's things that you can. I'm not saying they're relatable to person, but you could say, yeah, you know what? I can
Mhm.
see a guy searching for his father, going through all of these mental struggles, always feeling like he's never good enough. I can relate to that.
Yeah. Well, and just based off you giving that example of, there's that fantastical mind controlling element,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there are individuals who struggle with finding their own identity,
Yes, this is very
being
true.
lost
Yeah,
in a world where they've
yeah.
been told how they need to behave and whatever
Hmm.
circumstances they've gone through,
Yeah,
finding one's identity can be really tricky. And that's,
yeah,
you could find parallels there, I'm sure, too.
absolutely. Because our unfortunate friend Zershian does have to go on this journey to find his own identity. Where is his place? What does he really
Yeah.
do? He has to figure
Yeah.
that out because, well, unfortunately for him, he is no longer that humble history teacher anymore. He can't continue on
Yeah.
that way.
He's gotta ask the big questions. Does he like
That's right.
stew or does he like, pizza, you know? What's his
uh,
preference?
actually, that's a really good question. I think he'd be more of a stew guy, but I'm not really
Okay.
sure. I have to dig into that. Yeah.
I feel like stew is probably easier when you're on a big journey.
Yeah, probably. But that's a good question.
There you go. One to ponder for the next book.
That's right.
So in terms of since we're on characters,
Yeah.
what's your process like when it comes to developing your characters and
Mm.
taking them through those arcs?
Sure. So, like I said, I do like to give them very human qualities
Mm,
and human experiences that they go through. But this is one of my goals, actually. It revolves around dialogue. I think I'm a pretty strong dialogue writer. And
okay.
what I sought to do was you can tell which character is talking without the need of a dialogue tag.
I
So
love that.
that's something I mean, yes, of course, I use dialogue tags. I'm not one of those guys who says, no, no dialogue. There's he said, she says, and whatnot in the book. But
Yeah.
if there's like a conversation, a long conversation happening, and I stop using dialogue tags for the sake of pacing and whatnot, my goal was you would still be able to tell who is speaking without
Mm,
any of those context clues because I've given each character a unique voice and a unique way of
mm.
speaking.
It's
That was
important.
one of my goals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also sought to strike a balance too, like not every character is this big beefy warrior type.
Mm,
There's also the cozy moments between the
yeah.
characters too, and it's really just building in human moments and fantastical moments, and I like to strike a
Mm.
balance between the two.
I think it's important because you're gonna
Yeah.
like, those long journeys that
Hmm.
people go on, right? You're gonna
Yeah.
have all kinds of moments. It's not just gonna be action. You're gonna have
Yeah.
those moments where they're gonna be mad at each other. They're not
Exactly.
gonna get along. They are gonna get along. They're gonna
Yeah.
support each other, and then they're gonna
Hmm.
tell each other to bugger off, right?
Exactly. There was a podcast called Devilish Bookworms recently reviewed
Mm.
Fogbound, and they pointed out something that no one has pointed out yet, and I'm so glad they did. Well, someone
Oh,
may have
cool.
figured it out, just hasn't told me. But they pointed out all of the cozy scenes and the relationships between characters that have significant others, and they
Oh,
mentioned, some of their favorite characters were really the ones who were in those relationships because I portrayed them in mostly healthy ways and in the way they communicate.
right.
Like I didn't really think that the character Saina would be a favorite character of anyone, but
Oh.
they said that she was because she just knew Zershin, her
Mm.
significant other, so well. And those cozy scenes with them together just really brought them to life. And I
Aw,
was so happy that they mentioned that because I really did try to make that
right.
happen.
I love that,
Yeah.
and I can kind of imagine,
Mm.
what they mean by that because
Yeah.
I've read characters where,
Mm.
um, they have such a individualized voice, but they often
Mm.
are tucked into the background,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But they're so well portrayed.
Like I like to give every character their time on the stage.
Mm.
Because yes, of course, it is a classic fantasy. There is going to be the group of adventurers that goes off to do the thing. But I always liked, actually the Don't Make It Weird podcast brought this up when I was on with them, that
Oh.
I show the story of those left behind as well.
Mm.
Those who didn't
Oh,
go on the adventure. So
yeah.
it's essentially just a little background of the book. There is a war going on, and the reason
Mm.
for this quest is they have to go get reinforcements.
Right.
But there is currently a war going on in their hometown. So going back and looking at the characters who didn't go on this quest, you're seeing their struggles as the war is going on. You're
Mm.
seeing them noticing that maybe things aren't going so well. You're seeing, how they're relating to the news that the king is giving them. And it also serves as probably one of my favorite literary devices, dramatic irony, because it also tells
Mm.
the reader, okay, these dudes going on the quest, they better hurry the F up, okay? Things are going bad.
They need to pick it up a little bit, but then there's also that
Exactly.
anxiety of the unknown for those
Yes.
characters, right?
Hmm.
The
Exactly.
constant what ifs.
Hmm. It is.
Uh,
I love it.
Richard has a comment here, and
Mhm.
having not too many
Mhm.
characters definitely helped with the accessibility, and that's huge too. Fantasy
Mhm.
books I've read where they've got what 20 plus characters you have to keep
Yeah.
track of. Not to
Yeah.
knock those, they're
Yeah.
fantastic, but they
Yeah.
definitely take way more time and attention while you're reading.
For me, I need if I'm going to name a character, that means they have something to do with the plot. Like
Mm,
I don't like if they go to a bar, the innkeep is unless they have something to do with the plot is not going to have a name. They're just going to be the
right.
innkeep. If I'm going to go naming characters is really hard for me. If I
Is
ever
it? Okay.
shared, oh, it's really hard. If I ever shared like sheet I had with all the characters, oh, because FYI, from the original draft of Fogbound, I changed every character's name too. So I had to think of all new names.
Oh my
So
gosh.
like my Excel sheet with all these names is ridiculous. And
Mm.
but sometimes, it really I don't think I've actually ever said this on any interview I've been on, but it's so funny how this worked out. There's one character I could not get their name right for the life of me. I just couldn't get
Oh.
it. Their placeholder name was Adrian. It's clearly not a very high fantasy name. That was just their name, and I'm like, what do I do with this? Adrian. I'm thinking of all these names, these very fantastical names. And then I thought, what if I just switched the D and the R around so they became Ardian
Oh
instead? And it worked perfectly well. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a fantasy name.
Oh, it's a genius tactic right there.
Exactly. It's like, I have this list of 30 or 40 names. I don't like any of them. I'm just like,
Yeah,
what if I just do this? Oh, there we go. Perfect.
perfect. Find and replace.
That's right. Exactly. Oh, I have a good find and replace story, actually.
Oh, go for
So,
it.
oh God, if you're ever doing a find and replace, please be careful. Always do the whole like it asks you, case sensitive, find whole words, stuff like. Oh, please make sure you check those off and don't do what I did. So the character named Saina, her name was originally Rose. Doing a
Okay.
control replace for Rose is really hard because you have
Mm.
people can, he rose from his seat. There are roses on the ground. I found a line where they were walking through a field of dead Sainas. I'm like, oh no.
Oh. Yeah,
You have to
gonna
be really
fix that.
careful. You ever gotta
Fix
fix
it
that
quick.
one? Yeah. Oh God. That one didn't get through editing, which is good. I also made the amazing decision to gender swap some characters. So
Oh,
I then had to change pronouns, which is really hard to get all of them.
yes.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah, because then you
God.
also have to look in context as
Hmm.
well to the conversation if you have dialogue and everything going on.
Yeah, that was a gigantic pain in the rear end, but I think I caught them all.
So, with
Yeah.
that being the case, in terms of
Yes.
book 2, what might
Ooh.
you do differently?
Oh man. Well, book two. Okay, so I will say a little bit of a some insight into what I've done here. Every single book in this series, the rough draft is already written,
Oh,
already done.
fascinating.
They're already done. I do have to make some of the same changes that I did to book one. Like I included some scenes in book one that were originally in books two and three. So I have to
Okay.
make some other changes. I unfortunately have to change some names and pronouns again. I'm like, oh no, that's not no.
You couldn't escape that one this time around.
I can't escape that one. I got to do that. Um, but I think for book two, I actually think most of my errors this time around were doing a little bit more pre-release than I
Okay.
did for Fogbound. I think would
Yeah.
be what I do before. Like one of my biggest mistakes with Fogbound was the way I handled my ARCs, my advanced reader copies.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, I did end up sending about 50 of them, which I thought was a pretty healthy number.
Yeah, no,
But
that's great.
I should have used a service like a book funnel to do it
Right.
because I learned as I was sending them, some people said, "Hey, your ARC went to spam," and I'm like,
Yeah.
if this like I'm sending them to people I don't know, right? If
Yeah.
someone I know gets an ARC, they'll tell me that it went to spam. But someone who signed up that I don't know, they're not going to DM me and tell me they never got it.
Yeah.
So I think I lost a lot of potential reviews that way, which is
Right.
tough. And Fogbound didn't release with as many reviews as I would have liked. So
That's
for
hard.
book, yeah. So for I was playing a little bit of catch up for the first
Mm,
couple of months, where ARC readers that maybe it went to spam or they didn't receive it, they had finally received it and started reading it and whatnot. So the reviews did
right.
slowly start coming in. But I think for the next book, for book two, I would want to do more things like book tours, more things, especially using things like Book Funnel to get the book in more reviewers' hands in a way that it won't go to their spam folders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
hard
it
because
is,
spam
but
filters are so unpredictable
it's
too.
unfortunate. But I've also learned a lot more about book bloggers and book reviewers, and of
Right.
course BookTube too, since I published the book. Um, so I think I would do that a little bit differently this time around. Try and get some blogger attention before it releases.
Right.
So I've been fortunate that book bloggers have picked up Fogbound and are reading it, and I'm very, very, very thankful for that. But it occurred 4 or 5 months after it came out. I'm thinking, if they had that in their hands 2 or 3 months before the book came out, maybe they could have read and reviewed it by release or a little bit
Yeah.
after release and not 6 months after,
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it makes
So,
sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It's
really what I would do. I think with the writing part of it, I've got the process down pat for writing a
right.
draft. And I have my team. I've got my beta reading team, so
Awesome.
I'm pretty all set there. It's really the post production and pre publication part that I need to work on better for book two.
Right, and it's
Yeah,
tricky, right? Because it doesn't come
it
with
is.
a manual, right? Like we were
No,
talking about with the self-publishing,
yeah,
it's a lot of learning curves and
hmm,
finding the crowd as well, right? If
yeah,
you are not I find Twitter, the
hmm,
online book community in terms of the Twitter platform or X,
yeah,
whatever we're calling it
right,
nowadays,
yeah.
um, is probably a game it's been the most common game changer I've heard from authors,
Yeah,
where
I love my Twitter community.
yeah,
Everyone was so supportive of me when the book came out. I really can't thank my little Twitter following enough for I shouldn't say following, that sounds weird. My little Twitter community for picking up my book on release or at any point. I've gotten reviews from people I've known in the book community, for a couple of years now. The car selfies.
Those are a huge hit.
The huge hit, the car selfies. Every week when I have to go to work, get the car selfie before I drive.
Did you hear?
Hey, did you hear? I got this book out. It's only the 17th car selfie that I've taken about it. But no, Twitter's been great. I think to a lesser extent, Threads has been really
Yeah.
good for me as well.
Okay.
I've made a great new community on Threads. There's people on Threads that aren't on Twitter and vice versa.
Yeah.
So for me, I just love spreading myself as thin as possible so I can just not have time for anything else.
I
So
feel
that's
that.
really my strategy.
Isn't it fun?
The one place I haven't really tried yet, well, I shouldn't say one place, is like either the book talks or the Bookstagram. I'm
Mm,
on Instagram, but I've never made a reel. I've never made a
right.
video. I'm not really sure on how to do it or how to crack that because I feel like
Yeah.
that's an audience that I haven't hit yet. I
Right.
think my Twitter and my Threads community, I think, bar one of my posts getting a lot of traction, I think I've done what I can there.
Right.
So I
Okay.
need to branch into some different avenues, whether it's I think I lean more toward Bookstagram than I do TikTok, just
Right.
because I like the Bookstagram community. It's very cozy.
Yeah.
So, but I do want to try and break in there. I think that's my next goal.
Hmm. So I've been experimenting, and I don't know
Yeah,
if this is gonna be any help,
it
but I've
might.
been experimenting since I started my channel back 2 some years ago,
Yeah.
and I originally started with YouTube, and
Mhm.
then I was like, "Well, yeah, I actually didn't use social media really
Okay.
prior to
Yeah.
any of this, so
Hmm.
I went from nothing to getting spammed
I
with
love it.
notifications. Don't
Love it.
recommend. Um, but essentially what I found is, over the last couple of years, I've
Mhm.
slowly gone from YouTube to adding Instagram, to
Mhm.
adding Twitter, to adding TikTok most recently.
Mhm.
And what I do is I essentially if it's a short or a reel, whatever you wanna call it,
Mhm.
I will put it on all platforms.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
release
yeah.
that same
Mhm.
video on all platforms,
Hmm.
on the same day, right?
Okay.
So I kinda schedule it in that way, but it's
Sure.
interesting because that same content will perform so differently on each platform
Oh, that's so
because the
frustrating.
audience is so different on each platform,
Yeah.
right? And
Hmm.
I've actually had Instagram tell me, "Your reel is too short and it won't have a far enough reach."
Really?
Yes. So that's
Whoa.
for the cover reveals that I've been doing recently, where it's just a quick
Yeah.
trying to grab your attention, "Hey, look, a new book cover, tap the
Mhm.
pause button if you want more," right?
Oh. Mhm.
But they're like, "Nope, not gonna perform that
Mhm.
well because it's too short." Meanwhile,
Interesting.
places like YouTube and TikTok, they have caps, right? YouTube
Mm.
specifically, they have a cap on the shorts. You can't go past a certain time length for
That's
a
right.
short.
Yes, that's right.
And, TikTok does better with short, funny clips where they can just continue to doom scroll.
Yeah, that's right. Or they like are doing something else and the video just keeps repeating the same 7 seconds over and over again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I think what, is helpful if you're
Yeah.
looking to dive into them is
Mhm.
being aware of that. You
Yes.
can you can definitely post the same content on all platforms and then just
Mhm.
kind of,
Hope for the
continue that
best.
way,
Yeah. Mhm.
and hope for the best, or you can do more in-depth research and
Mhm.
post curated content to each one.
Mhm.
However, I will say
Ooh.
very few people do that.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yes. If you look at Caden Love, for example,
Yes, I know Caden.
he, recommended in the chat that I had with him, he actually started doing 3 TikToks a day.
Whoa.
And then I can't remember how long, but it took a few weeks and he had 1,000 followers.
Wow, good for
And
him.
he's got the Instagram as well, and he's
Wow.
gaining it really is just pushing content out there.
Yeah. Wow,
So
3 a day. I
yeah.
remember that when I first started my Twitter account, like, feeling the same way. They were like, "You had to start building your Twitter account, you
Mhm.
gotta tweet 7 or 8 times a day." I said, "What? I don't have that many
Yeah,
thoughts in a day." But now I can push out any tweet whenever. I don't really care what I
right.
tweet anymore, and maybe it'll end up becoming like that.
Right. Well, and it depends on the type of content you wanna put out, right? If you're okay with pumping out that content and you have that creativity, by all
Yeah.
means, but there is a creative burnout there too,
Oh, absolutely.
if you're not careful.
Yeah, I feel like I would because, I work full time. I've got a lot
Yeah.
going on outside of my writing. So what's really funny and what I love saying is I work in marketing, but my full-time marketing job it makes me too busy to actually market my books. So
Come on, you gotta be able to carve out an hour.
I God, I know. But I'm just like, geez,
At
it's
least
pretty
you have the
ironic.
tactics.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was really the timing of those tactics could have been better. But,
Mm,
things happen, life happens.
definitely.
I really wanted to get the book out when I did. It's really
Mm.
funny why I do this to myself. So the book came out and I got engaged in the same week.
Oh,
And
wow.
so the funny part of it all was I this is
You were
I don't
busy
know.
with wedding stuff.
Yeah, but what's really funny, I don't know why I do this to myself, but, the day I launched Fogbound is when I went to Italy. So I basically launched the book in the morning and then just left the country. So
You're like, that's the whole tactic of, "Well, will you sink or will you swim?
that's right.
Not
It's
yet."
like, "Well, I'm out. Let's go." I was like, "God, I hope there's nothing wrong because I'm not gonna be able to do anything from Italy."
Wow, you put a lot of, I would like to say trust, but I'm pretty sure that was not the intention.
And I definitely put a lot of trust in myself. It's like, "Okay, Nick, this is your first book you're ever putting on Amazon by yourself. If you screw this up, you won't be able to look at it until you're back from Italy in 2 weeks."
Yeah.
So
Well, I you know what, in that case, you cross your fingers and you do the best you can,
that's
but,
right. That's what I did.
yeah, hopefully, the next release is a little bit more attention to it and things are a bit more smooth, you're not in
Yeah.
Italy.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm gonna try and plan the release to not happen on my wedding day. So
yeah,
we'll try to plan that to not happen. That'd be nice. I'll put it on a day where I got nothing else going on. I'm not
perfect.
packing up to leave the country or
Yep.
anything like that.
Sit outside with a laptop and just,
That's
a
right.
good meal and a drink and
Just
just
let it go.
relax, yeah.
That's right. That's right. I don't know
So
why I do these things. But anyway,
well, no, and those are all learning curves, right? Similar
they
to
are.
your original start to the publishing industry, it
Yeah.
mistakes happen, you have
Oh,
learning
yeah.
curves, you grow from
Mhm.
it, and,
Yep.
sometimes you can have all the advice in the world, but
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to learn your own way,
Yeah,
right?
and that's really what I'm going through. The indie publishing game, very few people find instant success. It's really the
Yeah,
long game.
yeah,
So really my tactic with Fogbound is I'm not really worried about the profits. I am just
mhm,
worried about getting into as many people's hands as possible. So
absolutely,
that's really
yeah,
what I want to do because it's going to be a series, and this won't be the only series I write. It's really just getting my name out there and getting the book out there to, well, people who will
absolutely.
read it or anything.
Yeah, and usually the ones that end up getting picked up really quick or have
Mhm.
a huge readership right off the bat, like Travis
Mhm.
Baldree, he already
Yes.
had a huge following from his narrating career,
Right. That's true
right?
too.
So,
Yep.
not to say that Legends and Lattes wasn't, worth the hype,
Oh,
I
yeah.
thoroughly enjoyed it,
Oh,
but
yeah, of course.
his following, his career prior to that
Mhm.
really helped him in that release, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. Yeah, nothing against those people. It's like
Yeah,
they built that audience and they used it well, and I give them a lot of kudos for it.
absolutely, absolutely. So let's shift gears here, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
It's getting to that point where the pumpkin hour is kicking for this grandma. So
Love it.
so you also have a stunning map in your book.
Oh, thank you.
I wanna
Yes,
jump into your map a little bit.
let's do it.
So who designed your map? Who made it?
So the amazing, I always pronounce his name wrong. It's not pronounced like this. Dewey Hargreaves made my
Okay,
map.
alright,
He is awesome. He makes fantasy maps. Definitely check him out. And I believe it's deweyhargreaves.com is his
okay.
website. He also has like Twitter DMs open for commissions. So if you need a fantasy map made, like, hang on, let me see if I can get.
Yeah,
Just hit
let's get a
the
little
microphone.
view here.
Let me see if I can just open it up here. Do, 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 do.
And while you're
Awkward.
doing that, Richard, yes, writing is a passion and a hobby for me, not about making a quick buck.
So here is the map. I can't see what I'm doing, but I hope it can. Everybody else can see
A little
it. Here,
a little bit back. Go a little bit backward
go back.
and a
How's
little bit
that?
down.
Move it down.
Perfect.
How's that? All right. So this is the map that Dewey made for me. It's amazing,
I
and
love it.
honestly, a really funny anecdote about this map and the cover art too is I I actually changed some areas in the world in the book
Oh,
because of how Dewey drew the map. I was like, oh, he drew it better than I described it. I'm gonna go change it.
no way.
Yeah, I
You
was like,
actually
oh,
went back and did that.
I went back and changed it because I'm like, oh, you know what? The way he did this just makes more sense. I'm gonna go and change this. So, and what's really impressive about him is I can't draw, right? I can't.
Right.
He asked me to provide a sketch for the
Oh,
map, right? What I wanted. I'm like, oh God, okay, I'll do my best. And honestly, I drew him like 2 blobs and a couple of things in there, and that's what
yeah,
he gave me. I'm like, oh my God, how
that's
did you do that?
amazing.
He's incredibly talented, and I'm not just saying this because like the map he made for me is like the header on his website. I love that. I'm very proud of that. i'm
Yes.
not i'm not saying that just because it's there, but just go and check out Dewey's maps. He
Yeah.
makes some incredible stuff. If you need a fantasy map done, whether it's for a city, a world,
Mm,
anything, I highly recommend it.
fantastic. I'll
Yeah,
try and get a link, and, I'll put that in the description after,
yeah,
our chat here for anyone who wants to check that out.
yeah, he's
Um,
awesome.
and Andrew, good to see you, Andrew. What
Hey,
book does NJ write? That is Fogbound. Can you show us that beautiful cover again, Nick?
yes, absolutely. Sorry, I keep hitting my microphone when I reach
No,
over
that's
here.
okay. It happens.
The book, Fogbound by me. This is the hardcover edition, of course. There's, paperbacks, ebooks, whatever you like. I really love the hardcover edition too. This was the illustrator is Felix Ortiz, and Faye Lane did the design. Felix is awesome. We all know Felix. He
Yes.
does great work. But I also love it because Faye had an awesome idea of on the back of the hardcover to put a quote
Mm,
instead of the actual blurb, which is on the flap
right.
or something. And I'm like, oh man, that's so cool. I love that. I love that. This is why I hire
Yeah.
people much smarter than me to do things like covers and all that good stuff.
It takes a village, right? You
It
build a
really
team.
does. Like I can
Yeah.
handle what's inside the book until it needs to get edited. I didn't, and maybe I can't handle what's inside the book, but the outside of the book, I really need to hire professionals.
You know what? It is a
Yeah,
team effort, and when you
it
are
is.
self-publishing, you're basically building your own team,
And I think that's
right?
really awesome. I love going out and hiring freelancers. I think it's really great to support independent artists too.
Yeah,
It's so what
absolutely.
even though when you're hiring an editor, hiring an illustrator, hiring anybody, you are supporting an independent artist.
Yep,
So
yep.
I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, especially it was the it goes around the wheel there, or a circle,
It
right? Because
does.
you're self-publishing yourself, and
Hmm.
it all comes around, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And, Richard here, I love this, should sell prints of the map or cover.
So that's a great idea. I have actually tried to print it. I, for the life of me, cannot get the sizing right. It always comes out bad.
Oh,
So,
no.
so don't worry. I've tried. For some reason I just can't seem to get it right. But I'll
One
get it
day.
right eventually. One day I'll get it right. One day
I
I'll replace the Lord of the Rings map behind me with my own map. Someday when I can finally get it
Ooh,
to print.
there
Yeah,
you go. Or, just mix them in there if you
let's
can.
stack them both. Yeah,
But I think it's a great idea because personally, like, I've also been lucky enough to receive review copies that have
yeah.
come with maps. One of them
That's
I have
awesome.
framed,
Oh, that's so
because
awesome.
it's huge. I won't grab it now, but it's
Yeah.
like, 18 by whatever, and they
Oh,
had,
jeez.
it's for Pratani, Mike, Molman's world.
Oh, I'm gonna be on his channel in a couple months.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he's
he
great.
he did this stunning map. He, like,
That's
stained it with
awesome.
tea, rolled it up, and it was all tied up in a parchment and everything.
Yeah,
And, I mean, in terms of being a reviewer and receiving all that additional stuff, even, the art cards with the maps on them,
yeah,
it's always a bonus because even for those art
absolutely.
cards, I use them as bookmarks, you
Oh,
know?
yeah, that's sorry, I keep hitting my microphone for some
No,
reason.
that's okay. The
Yeah.
with that mic, there's actually no feedback, so you're good.
Ooh,
Yeah,
beautiful. All
that is
right.
the nice thing.
That's great.
And, Tim here says, "That happened with some illustrations I got done. For one in particular, I looked and thought, 'Whoa, that's even cooler than what I had
Yep.
in mind.'"
So, like, for example, here on this cover, you'll notice the guy on the front has a beard.
Yes,
He didn't
yeah.
originally have a beard, so at one point in the story, I had the main character remark, "Oh, hey, your beard's gotten pretty long." That's the reason
Oh,
that line is there, because of this cover.
I love it. I
It's
love
good.
I love how, those individuals you hire and
Yeah,
have work with you and visually bring your characters to life,
Yeah.
impact your own writing.
It's really cool, right? Like, there's also, if you've encountered him on Twitter, he
Mm.
goes by Stevie Wildcard, Stephen Todd.
Oh,
He's done a lot of character art for me. Like
yeah.
he did the first ever character art for this book, and like it just blew me away to finally see my characters in an illustrated form. That was before the
Yeah.
cover came out and anything like that. I'm just like, oh man, it feels real. This is so cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pull this up here. Andrew is asking for an elevator
Oh,
pitch.
sure. All right. So, Fogbound stars a history teacher who unfortunately is under mind control from a long dead legendary hero, and now he's enlisted in a war and must go forth into a battle for both his homeland and his own mind.
Yes. And Andrew, go back to a certain point. I'm sorry, I'm not going to remember what point in the chat, and you'll get more details as Nick he gives a bit more of insight into the story if you're looking for a longer description as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm
And
more than happy to have you a history teacher. I love it. I love it. I love
it's
it.
always the quirky things that gets readers. Like for me,
Yeah,
Hills of Heather and Bone. There's a
yeah.
spiteful chicken. I was like, say no
I love
more.
it. Yeah, that's
I I,
amazing. I'm
I
in.
want to read about a spiteful chicken. That's
I
obviously
am
not the full
totally
story.
in. Right, but I'm totally in. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah. Give me spiteful chicken. Give me history teacher.
Incredible. I love it.
So just a few more questions here before we
Yeah.
wrap up. So anyone in the chat, if you do have a question for Nick, get those in while you can, because we're gonna be wrapping up here
Yeah.
shortly. And speak of Mike, look who's here.
Mike,
Hello,
did you
Mike.
should we like say his summon word or something?
We
Thanks for
must have. We were just
thanks for
talking
popping
about you,
in,
Mike.
Mike. Yeah, we're just talking about you. Thanks for popping in.
Yes, thank you. We were just talking about how awesome your map is and
Yes.
all of that as well. So
Yeah.
yeah. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for those questions to come in, how do you balance everything, the podcasting, the writing and publishing, plus everything else you do, full-time job? How do you balance it all?
Oh, I don't sleep. That's really how I
Oh,
balance.
well,
That's kind of a joke, but no, I tend to sacrifice sleep to get everything I need to get done.
oh
Because
no.
right now I'm also wedding planning, which is exciting. That also
Yes.
takes time, right? But it's also a really exciting part of
Congratulations.
my life. Thank you, thank you. It's a really exciting part of my life. It's going to be an amazing day. But as
Yeah.
anyone who has gotten married knows, there is a lot that goes into it.
Hmm.
So we're approaching. I believe we're approaching the end of the planning, which is awesome.
Good.
Hiring the vendors and whatnot. I believe we're approaching the
Yeah.
end, but that takes up a lot of time too.
Yep.
So it is hard to balance everything I like to do, but
Right.
you know, I make sacrifices for the things I enjoy, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. And I try to weed out the things that okay, you say that. It is funny. We have had my fiance and I had a conversation like, do you just want to go back to Italy and just like get it done?
Yeah.
We're like, it's very tempting.
Go. Do it.
But yeah, I try to, how do I phrase this? I value my time more than
Mm.
I value other things, if that makes sense. Like
No, absolutely.
if I can pay for something to be done instead of spending 4 hours on it, I will opt to do that instead,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No.
Like I can do so something about me, I can do little bits of car work myself, but
Mhm.
now it's the time investment. Do I really want to spend 2 or 3 hours working on my car?
Yeah.
Where maybe I can just give it to a mechanic that'll take 20 minutes of my time and I'll just go and pick it up for some
Yep.
money. Maybe I'd rather do that now, reserve those 2 or 3 hours to something that I enjoy doing. Because even
Yeah.
though I can do that work, it's not something I really like to do. No offense to mechanics, just not something
No.
I like to do. So I
Yeah.
like to reserve my time for the things I enjoy. And that's how I balance things really.
That's an entirely fair point. We
Yeah.
kinda try my husband and I try and do the same tactic in
Yeah.
terms of, if we have to build something, like we
Yeah.
can build the deck, but
Yeah.
do we really want to do it ourselves for the time it'll take that we
A
don't
lot of
really
time.
have to sacrifice,
Yeah.
right? You kind of have to pick your poison in that case.
You do, because it's tough, right? Because you also weigh like, okay, how much money will it actually take for me to make this problem go away?
Yeah. Andrew, here goes the hard way.
You know
Rather
what? I
get
love
Andrew to
that.
show
I
you.
respect that. I love it. I love it. Because sometimes, there's some stuff you just got to do it. You got to get in
Yeah.
there. You got to swear a lot, like you're building an IKEA cabinet or something. You
Yeah.
just got to get it done.
Richard, he's in that if I can pay someone
Mhm.
to do this job, I will.
Why Richard and I get along so
Yeah.
well. We're on the same wavelength.
And there's also some things, right, you have to look at, well, I could do this, but am I gonna
Yeah.
do it professionally and am I gonna do it well,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That too.
So,
That too.
yeah. Andrew, I am cheap.
I love it. Andrew, much respect. I love that. I
Absolutely.
love it.
So in terms of, that question that I wanted to come back to, and I think we
Oh,
discussed
oh,
behind the
oh.
scenes.
We did.
You've done some chats, you've done
Yeah.
podcasts and all these
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
Has there been a topic you haven't been able to talk about that you've just been dying to dig into?
Mhm. So if we're talking book related topics,
For
it's
sure.
not it's not really something that we can mention on a podcast because of the
Hmm.
spoiler nature of it.
Ah,
But I would love if someone were to do like, hey, we're interviewing NJ Alexander, we're gonna spoiler, this is a spoiler review of his book. I would love more people to ask me about the mysteries within the book and if
interesting.
they've figured them out. Because there are some mysteries in the book that I don't explain. I alluded to that earlier.
Mhm.
And I would love more people to reach out to me and ask if they got it right.
Yeah.
That's something I love to hear. I love theories. I love
Okay.
internet theories about stuff. There's
Yes.
I'll give a little insight into one. There's everybody's favorite character to hate in Fogbound is the guy referred to as the boil-faced man. He is this ugly guy who murders people and drinks blood. He is a
Aptly
disgusting
named.
character. Yeah, he is a disgusting character and I don't tell you who he is or who his
Okay.
identity is. But there are hints throughout the
Interesting.
book and I love when people DM me like, "Did I get it right? Is he the guy? Is that him?" And I would love more people to talk about that with me, whether it's in
Mm.
private, whether it's over interviews, because I love going into the deep lore, the deep mysteries behind some of the characters in the world.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
here, I'll make you a deal, and we
Oh.
can revisit this. I'm gonna read
Mhm.
it,
Oh,
and
okay.
we
Great.
can do a spoiler chat if you're okay
Ooh, a
with that being
spoiler
on the
chat.
internet.
I love that.
If you're alright with
Absolutely.
that.
As long as it's aptly like, hey, we're gonna
Yeah.
spoil the heck out of this book. I'm totally fine with it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we can put a banner on the bottom,
Absolutely.
spoiler
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, because I love for me as a reader, one of the
Yeah.
things I love is being able to follow that foreshadowing and trying to
Mhm.
puzzle all of that out. I've
Yeah.
done that, I've been that reader where I'm like,
I love it.
"What'd you do? What no."
No, what are you doing?
And I normally, the answer I get back is, "Oh?" Um
Like I said earlier, most of the things where you'll say, what are you doing? I'll
Yeah,
say, that was there with intention.
and
There's a
that
reason.
still won't answer my questions.
I love it. I love it.
Awesome, and Richard is, he's in. He says he's in, so
Richard's in. Love that. Love
yeah.
that.
Oh, Andrew, I won't be able to fit this in for months. Eventually, though, that you know what?
Andrew, yeah.
We'll have to figure out the timing and logistics of all this in the background, but, it'll happen. As long as Nick is okay with it, it's gonna happen.
And Andrew, if you're interested in the book and you pick it up, I very much appreciate you for that. Get to reading it pardon me, whenever you can. I just really appreciate taking an interest in it.
Absolutely. And finally, here before we close out, I just want to remind everyone to go in the description and follow Nick. Go check out his book, Fogbound. All the links will be down there in the description. And with that being said, where's the best place to follow you? Where can people get updates on what's coming out next?
Sure. So I'm mostly on Twitter and Threads. Those are my main social medias of choice. If I post something on Twitter, I'll usually post something similar on Threads. I use them pretty equally these days. My website, well, I do need to update it a little bit, but if something important happens, it will be on my website. That's njalexander.com. So find me, I should say my handles, at Nick A. Writes, Nick_A_Writes, the same handle on all platforms. I don't post on Instagram that much. I'll post a story here or there. But if you follow me there, if something important happens, I'll post it there too.
Yeah, brilliant. And just thank you again so much, Nick, for this fantastic conversation. To everyone in the chat for making this a blast as well. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been great. Thank you so much, Kay, for hosting this. I'll say if you're listening to this now or later, if you are a book blogger or a book reviewer, I need like a review copy of Fogbound, please feel free to hit me up, DM me, go on my website, anything like that. I can get you hooked up.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. And yes, Richard, get some
Yes,
sleep. You
go to sleep, Richard. You're like 2 a.m. there now. Get out of here.
have
I
a
love you,
wonderful
Richard.
sleep.
Thank you so much for the support.
Thank you so much for staying up and chatting
Yes.
with us, and for everyone who popped in along the way. Absolutely appreciated. And as always, Nick, thank you again. We're gonna chat again.
Awesome.
Definitely
Love to
chat
hear
again.
that. Thank you, Kay.
Have a great night, everyone, and as always, take care of yourselves.